everyone, I'm going to be doing 3 videos today since I will not be available for the next coming 2 days. So without further ado, let me discuss what I wanted to discuss for today's video for this Animation Friday, and then move on to the other 2 videos that I will be making this evening for you so that it's all cut up and ready and you can all watch for your enjoyment. Now, for this particular episode of Animation Friday, I thought it would be really interesting to discuss the significance of slapstick throughout animation. Slapstick has been used probably since the dawn of animation. I mean, even within the early Mickey and Minnie cartoons, including Goofy and Donald too, you do see slapstick being used, and quite effectively, actually. But in particular, animation has a lot that it can do with slapstick. And the primary reason for that is because you're not limited by having to stage something. It's not like in real life where you have to pretend to punch somebody, or you have to pretend that somebody got hurt. You don't have to do that with animation. You can actually show the art being hurt or suffering some kind of misfortune or misery in a comedic fashion, usually. And that's really what bridges the gap, because animation is pure fiction and no grounds in reality whatsoever. So I think that's why slapstick has held such a significance to animation over the years. And a variety of animation studios that have come and gone have used slapstick to some extent. I mean, even if you look at the older cartoons like Popeye, they were using slapstick. You know, the Looney Tunes are probably the kings when it comes to slapstick. Tom and Jerry is another big example too. The reason though why slapstick works, though, as a comedic technique is that it brings out something funny while at the same time bringing in some kind of misery. Usually, and sometimes a lot of the time with an animation, this is done to the villain. For example, Wile E. Coyote, he always wants to eat the good Roadrunner. And what happens every time he tries to get the Roadrunner? You know, wah, you know, it's that kind of comedic effect that really, I think, usually works for animation fairly well. Yeah, we'll see protagonists now and again get knocked down, but it seems like it's done more so well when bad things are sort of happening to the antagonists. Funny yet miserable kinds of things. And I think this bodes well for adults as well as children, because we can sort of laugh at the attempts that they have in trying to, you know, conjure up a scheme and then failing. And I think there is this sort of essence to failure with slapstick, in particular with an animation, because we like the idea of somebody, you know, because animation oftentimes you have to think like way out of the box, and they'll come up with these really ridiculous scenarios that you probably couldn't place so well within real live action, and they put it on the screen, and in doing so oftentimes you will get a very funny reaction because it is just so outlandish, it's so out there. It just takes away the reality of the situation, and it makes you, you know, laugh because of that. And I think that's also another reason why slapstick is held up with an animation so well, because not only are you not limited to certain realities, but you also are able to do a whole lot more creatively speaking. because again, you're sort of not bound to reality. So those two things sort of go hand in hand. Um, but I think that's what I really enjoy about animation in particular is just that how they can use this. Um, when they use it against the villain, it leads to a lot of funny, genuinely funny moments because we like to see the villain in misery. We like to see the villain trying but failing because it's funny. Because when you see someone, trying so hard to accomplish something and yet failing, you sort of laugh at it. Because that person is trying to achieve evil ends but can't do it. Um, and and that's kind of another thing too that I think's sort of a part of the reason why people like this kind of humor a lot. Um, I think also people like seeing sort of pain um, because pain is kind of a way, a means to laugh at things, even though it's not real. And I think that's another thing too that animation can do so well. They don't need to they don't need to shy away from they don't need to have to worry about reality. They don't need to show what actually would happen in a particular scenario. They can just show the most outlandishly goofy, oh, he just got hit again, but he's totally fine. Um, and sometimes some people might say it goes a little bit too violent. Um, again, I think this is more so with the more adult animation. You will actually show blood or show, some kind of gore effect to it in order to, get some kind of comedic reaction. However, I don't think this technique really works all too well because, again, it's trying to put in some sort of reality surrounding it. And I think it works better if animation just goes for the complete nonsensical and over the top sort of uh, reactions and effects from slapstick as opposed to trying to put blood or put in things that are sort of grounded within reality, and make things a lot more dark and sinister. I just don't really gravitate towards that as much as I do to the very nonsensical and really, really outlandishly goofy kinds of slapstick. Um, I think though sometimes slapstick can be used as a means to, deter from the story. Um, uh, this is why I really prefer uh, Disney animation only so because they didn't rely so heavily on the slapstick. Whereas Looney Tunes, that was their big thing. That was the thing that they did so well at. And yeah, I admire them for doing it so well. It's just that there's just a certain repetitiveness, I think, to slapstick. I mean, there's only so much you can do to the point where, it just kind of becomes repetitive. Okay, we see this happening time and time and time again to this character. It's funny once, it's funny a couple of times, but to see it done over and over again to this length, it just kind of deters the enjoyment of animation, at least for me. I like it when it's there, but I don't think if it's really the only thing that I notice throughout the entire piece, it's usually what deters me from enjoying it. Um, Whereas with other kinds of animation, when they use slapstick, they use it for a significant kind of purpose or for a certain kind of joke, um, or some kind of effect, but they don't use it as their kind of centerpiece. They don't use this is the talent that we have. Because I think, just relying so heavily on just one technique um, just doesn't lend itself well, I think, as I like it to. Uh, as maybe some people will disagree with me on this, but um, like for example, Tom and Jerry. I mean, yes, it's funny. Yes, it's engaging. Yes, it's great to see these two kinds of personas going at each other. But at the same time, it just gets repetitive. It just gets, you see the same similar scenarios happening over and over and over again. And to me, I think that's just not enough for my taste. So that's why I wouldn't necessarily consider Tom and Jerry as one of my personal favorites. Although I'll admit there is a lot of talent behind the slapstick, and I understand, the creativity and the the time and effort put into that kind of a comedy. But I feel that there is just such a repetitive nature to this technique, and just such an overuse of the technique that it doesn't allow me to enjoy it as much. If slapstick's part of animation, I think that's great, and I think it should continue to be part of animation. But as centerpiece, as the big the big opus, I just think that that's not what animation should always be about. Yes, it should be about, making you laugh and, doing the nonsensical stuff too. But I think animation can also have a serious side to it as well. And I think if the serious and the comedic are balanced out, I think it's more enjoyable than constantly having this repetitive use of, somebody getting hit in the head, somebody, slipping on something, somebody being hurt. It just gets dull. And it just doesn't become off as so funny to me. Um, and I understand that they try to use different techniques and they try to use different ways in which to use slapstick, but again, like I said before, I don't think that should be. I think slapstick is a good part of animation. I think it should continue to be a part of animation. But as far as, putting it as the center thing, I think takes away from the story. I think it takes away from the characters. Um, because if all we're doing is watching them do slapstick, uh, it just becomes too dull for me. I mean, it just doesn't have the same comedic effect, especially if I see it over and over and over again. And they do use similar things, like, when some character gets hit on the head, it's like, he's all like out of it. Or when he slips on something and he hurts himself, it's like, yow, it's so much pain. Um, there are a lot of, similarities. There's, but the way in which they use slapstick, I think, is important. For example, the reason why I think the slapstick in Peter Pan, for example, works really well is there's some smarts behind the reasoning to the slapstick. It's not like, you know, it's not like there's these two rivals, going at each other. It's not like Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner. It's not the, Tom versus Jerry. It's Captain Hook, who is a villain, and it's also Mr. Smee, who's really supposed to help him, but is still, kind of contributing unintentionally to, sort of Hook's downfall, so to speak. And if you watch the slapstick in that film, you'll understand what I mean. And that's something that's actually adds another layer of funny, because there's more depth, there's more, I think, intelligence behind it. It's not just done for the sake of, oh, he's a cat, he's a mouse. Obviously, they're gonna not like each other. Whereas here, making the slapstick out of two people that are supposedly supposed to be on the same side, I think is actually leads to more funny and creative moments. Um, but yeah, I think that's really all I can say about this topic. I mean, slapstick is interesting. I mean, there are myriads of ways in which this has been used over the years, and I think it should definitely continue to be part of animation. I just don't think it should be the centerpiece, or just because somebody can do slapstick that's somehow funny. Um, I think there just should be a lot more to animation than just, hitting things, people or mouses hitting cats, and Roadrunners outsmarting, coyotes. I just think that there's just a little bit more that animation has to offer than just that. But when it does offer it, it's funny and it's engaging. I just don't think it holds as much interest to me over time, especially when you see the very repetitive nature of the technique. But yeah, I think that's really ultimately all I can say in regards to this video. But if there are any questions, comments, concerns, I'd be more than happy to answer them. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a pleasant day, week, month, and year. And I hope to see you all in the next video. Take care.